Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us again at the Chicago Baseball and Educational Academy's Winter Meetings Series. Today, we're excited to be joined by two individuals from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We're here with Nelson Cooper. He is the executive director of the Pittsburgh Hardball Academy, along with being the community liaison for Pirates RBI. And then sitting next to Nelson is Brian Jacobson. He's the program director for Pirates RBI, along with being the president of Pittsburgh Hardball Academy. Gentlemen, thank you guys both so much for logging in and joining us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So, if you can just sort of start off talking about both your organizations, kind of an overview of what you do and the types of communities and children you serve, that'd be great.
Sure, absolutely. I'll start with the Pirates RBI program that we have in Pittsburgh. The Pirates RBI program, we do a lot of support in all the separate communities in and around greater Pittsburgh. We serve upwards of about 1,500 kids, ages 9 through 18. And what we do is we provide support by partnering with the City of Pittsburgh Parks and Recreation Department, and we formed a league called Pirates RBI City Sports League. Now that's a baseball and softball league that has 12U baseball, pony style baseball, Colt baseball, super Colt baseball, all the way up to 18 years of age. And we also have 12U, 15U, 18U girls softball programming as well. So the one criteria that we have in order to be eligible to participate in the Pirates RBI program is that you come from a school district, or at least you live in an area that feeds into a school district that has 50% or greater free and reduced lunch program eligibility. So that enables us to be able to provide the resources to the communities that actually need those resources. Pirates RBI, our main mission is to increase diversity in the game, increase participation in the game. So being able to grow the game 20% year after year among our greater Pittsburgh youth is kind of our goal. Making sure that we increase it, we get the game out in the communities. Western Pennsylvania's big football, area, big basketball area, but predominantly football. So baseball tended to kind of decline a bit in the inner city of Pittsburgh. So what we're trying to do is really generate some excitement, bring baseball back with the support of the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Pirates Charities in partnership with the city of Pittsburgh, as well as the Boys and Girls Clubs of Western Pennsylvania. We're really trying to grow the game, and we've had some level of success to really generate some excitement. Keep in mind that Pirates RBI is primarily a recreational program. And so what we have done is we've identified that some of these kids are varying levels of skill. Some of them are entry level, some of them are more advanced, some of them have the raw skill set that just needs some polish and some fine tuning on the fundamentals. And so that's when we, Nelson and myself, we said, well, you know what? In order for these kids to have access to high level training, being able to get to these collegiate showcases, get to these high level travel tournaments, we're going to have to come up with a program that helps subsidize and get these kids out there so they can actually be seen by college coaches. So I'm going to turn it over to Nelson to kind of explain, Pittsburgh Hardball Academy and how that was a neat segue that came from the Pirates RBI program.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And I think you explained it well. Pirates RBI really is a recreational based program. As Brian said, we want any kid that's interested in baseball to be able to play and participate regardless of skill level. But as we've seen just in baseball in general over the past several years, the cost to play high level baseball is it's very difficult for people in the communities that we're trying to serve, in the communities that maybe are low to moderate income or underserved, underrepresented. So therefore, with Pirates RBI, we either lost the players completely, right? They would go and play on a travel team. They would, stretch their money thin to try to get on a travel team to get in front of college coaches and scouts, or, alternative, which is even worse, is they just want to ever have that opportunity. So we started Pittsburgh Hardball Academy at the beginning of 2020, which ended up being perfect timing with COVID and everything of that nature, because the RBI City Sports League didn't happen and we were able to do some programming through Hardball. But in 2020, we started Hardball Academy. And I like to think of it, it's a baseball program, but more so than baseball, it's a mentorship program. We're taking young men and hopefully in the future, young ladies as well, from kids to recruitable student athletes is what I think. And in order to be a recruitable student athlete, being good at baseball is great, but you have to have the grades, you have to have the social part of it down to be able to assimilate into college pretty easily. So we do a lot of different academic, social enrichment programming in addition to playing in high-level travel tournaments and doing the different training and the different high-level things that are replicated at any other elite travel team. I'd argue maybe better than some. So our approach really with Pittsburgh Hardball is to take those kids from the RBI program that show the talent, and more importantly, the talent that show the desire to want to be college athletes, and help them get to that level through college recruiting services, through the training, and through the mentorship.
Is Hardball Academy an independent 501c3?
So we're an independent nonprofit, and we do not have a 501c yet. We're actually partnered with the Poise Foundation, which is the oldest African-American foundation in the country. And they serve as our fiscal sponsor. So all donations are through the Poise Foundation are all tax deductible, as if any other nonprofit organization.
That's a great way to do it, and that also taps you into a great community, right? So that's awesome. So I don't know a ton about Pittsburgh, and I'm sure there's plenty of people who will be watching this probably never been to Pittsburgh. Why don't you tell me a little bit, Chicago has its neighborhoods, there's affluence in some parts, there's desperate poverty in others, there's segregation, there's tension. We are on the news a lot, obviously. How does Pittsburgh compare, or what sorts of things in Pittsburgh do we want to know to understand why these programs are so important?
So, Pittsburgh's not terribly different than Chicago in that aspect. We do have, neighborhoods. There's a lot of pride in each of the neighborhoods, and there's a certain level of disparity, and not a certain level of disparity, considerable amount of disparity when you go from neighborhood to neighborhood. So there are affluent neighborhoods, there's kind of middle income neighborhoods, and then there's some depressed neighborhoods. So the city of Pittsburgh was kind of built on the whole steel industry, and that steel industry is really, there's a mass exodus of the steel industry out of Pittsburgh. So all of those bordering towns and townships that border the rivers, where a lot of the raw materials and the steel was transported up and down the rivers, and where a lot of the steel mills were built, those neighborhoods that at one time flourished because that was the main economy in those areas, now they've become fairly depressed. So there's a lot of folks that still live in those areas that the economy is just, for the most part, up and left, and it really hasn't been rebuilt over decades. So we have a huge level of socioeconomic disparities when you go from different steel town communities to some of the suburban communities where there's a lot of economic, difference.
One thing that's interesting about Pittsburgh, I'm from Seattle originally, and one thing that was interesting when I moved here is the actual city of Pittsburgh is not particularly large in comparison to like the greater metro area or the Allegheny County area. So there's, you cross the street over here, someone may refer to it as Pittsburgh, but it's actually maybe Wilkinsburg, which is not technically in the city. But for the basis of our programming, we include all of those communities that may be depressed, in communities that are not as well, to be frank. We include those communities in our programming as well. So it's not only specific to city limits of Pittsburgh.
Now, this is all before COVID.
This is all before COVID, that's correct.
So,
yeah,
not getting better. Not right now.
It's getting a little bit better, where we're starting to see a bit of a decrease in our county and in the city, with the number of cases, the number of deaths, unfortunately, but we've been seeing a bit of a leveling off. There's a fair amount of folks that are getting vaccinated. One thing about Pittsburgh is that we have a huge regional health system, and we actually have two competing regional health systems that are very large. We have the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, and we have Allegheny Health Network, where we have the University of Pittsburgh, which is a huge research university. So we have lots of people that work in the medical field, so they get vaccinated. They're in phase 1, and they're the ones that are getting vaccinated. So I think there's a bit of a ripple effect of all these hospital and medical employees that are actually getting vaccinated, which may be impacting the number of cases that in the communities.
I
can't imagine though that COVID's been good for the economic situation that was already present in Pittsburgh.
No, it really hasn't. However, we have addressed some programming through Pirates RBI and the Pittsburgh Hardball Academy. We tend to tell ourselves we're like a youth academy. We operate like a youth academy without the youth academy. Like Kansas City has a beautiful youth academy. The Reds have a beautiful youth academy. The Nationals and Philadelphia, they have all these beautiful MLB youth academies. We have a converted pool area that is in one of the Boys and Girls Clubs that we put some batting cages
in a pool.
Well, it used to be a pool that was filled in.
Oh, okay. I imagine it's actually in the pool.
that would be neat, but they actually filled the pool in, turf over it, and put some batting cages in it. So it's functional, but we operate like a youth academy without the youth academy.
And we use a lot of the public parks, the city fields. I mean, we use soccer fields, but we'll use the city baseball fields, which in my opinion, as a coach, makes our team better because, if you can field on some of those fields, you can field anywhere. But it's an interesting dynamic. I think we were kind of joking about it, kind of nomadic, where, practice on Tuesday during the summer is going to be at Mellon Field in the south side or in the east side of Pittsburgh. And then we're going to go over the south side of Pittsburgh on Thursday at, a different field. So we kind of move all over and kind of use all the resources of the city. But it's an interesting experience and does give the kids an opportunity to, I think it's a character developing thing. If you can play at some of the fields we play at and train at, then you can play anywhere.
So you were saying, correct me if I get this number wrong. You were saying there were 1,600 participants in your program?
1,500, and that's what we calculated before we had to shut things down in 2020.
So both organizations had to do quite a bit of pivoting.
Yeah, so there was separate pivoting with RBI. You want to explain what RBI?
Yeah, so with RBI, we had to shut down our RBI City Sports League. So we couldn't host these 1,500 kids and have these leagues through the city because the city was shut down effectively. So the city wasn't going to host or provide any permits to their fields because we couldn't gather. There was zero gathering during COVID. So that happened in sort of mid-March. So what RBI did do is we had programming all the way up to the middle of March until we hit the red phase in Pennsylvania, and where we shut all of our programming down. So in doing so, we had to kind of start the planning process. So we had a long interval of just really planning for the next phase, and making sure we get the communications out to the communities that we weren't going to have a league and that we were hopeful to have some type of programming in the fall. So there's a fair amount of these communities, very similar to how you guys support communities. We do the same thing with Pirates RBI, where we'll support them with equipment, we'll make connections with umpires, we'll do those sort of things if we can't support them with a league. So a lot of these communities, once we got into the yellow phase where we had limited gatherings, but the city was still a little bit skittish. They weren't interested in hosting anything or allowing gatherings on their fields or any of their rec centers or anything like that. So a lot of the communities kind of got together and they said, listen, we're going to try to still play some baseball and play some softball. And that's when Pirates RBI came in, and we kind of pivoted our services, not necessarily providing programming, but we provided umpires, we provided equipment, we provided bases, we provided field dry, field liner, gloves for the kids that didn't have gloves. So those are the kind of things that we were able to support with Pirates RBI. And then what we do is we rely heavily on MLB. So MLB had a lot of content during COVID. You know, they had a lot of Zoom programming where they had discussions about race relations. They had discussions about the playing stickball in the Bronx, you know, and how to start a stickball league. You know, some interesting things that our kids just really don't have insight into. They're not from New York City, where stickball might be second nature, you know. Mm-hmm. But we were able to, you know, send out these links that the MLB hosts, and it's through MLB RBI, where they're called mound visits. That's our mound visit sessions, and we were able to do that every 2 weeks, just to keep our kids engaged.
Where are you guys at now? Where are both organizations right now with things?
So if I could speak to what Hardball did in 2020 real quick. So separately, given, you know, our program with Hardball is smaller in nature, obviously, given it's a select team of the top kids. We had about 15 kids this summer. And once the restrictions in late May, early June started opening up, we were able to begin to do outside practices where everything was kind of spaced out. And we're able to play over the course of the summer. We were able to play some games, get games in and from the summer to late fall with that core group of hardball players. We did some tournaments in different states that had some, you know, different restrictions there. But the main thing that was impressive about this, it was our first, you know, summer as a team, first time putting together a high level organization, and our record was 35-13. We played against some of the top travel teams in this region and in the Pennsylvania region. And I know that we were successful because there were excuses of why our kids, which were all of our teams are for hardball are over 50% minority. There are excuses of why those city kids were beating some of the suburban kids, right? How could those kids from the city that were untrained, unpolished, be able to compete with suburban kids? And, you know, in the past in Pittsburgh, you know, prior to our involvement with either program, the inner city baseball was kind of a joke. I mean, that it wasn't very polished. There weren't people there that trained the kids with the fundamentals, and we've been able to come in and do that. So then we go and play suburban teams and we compete and we do a good job. And it's really opened a lot of doors, opened a lot of eyes. And so the 2020 program for hardball, not only we play games, all 6 of our graduating seniors were accepted into college. All 6 have scholarships and are playing baseball in college. This year we have 9 graduating seniors, 5 of which have already accepted scholarships to go to college, and 4 are making their final choices and things of that nature. And then we have another one who's a 2022 graduate who's accepted a scholarship to college, is on the radar to you know, potentially looked at as a prospect, a draft prospect. And all of that programming, right? These are all kids who participated in the RBI league, and without the programming from hardball, either would have never got on the radar or would have had to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to get on the radar, get the training. And no kid in 2020 in our program paid more than $300 for everything.
Where's your funding come from?
My wallet's in my pocket. No, I'm kidding. But some of our wallet, we fundraise. I mean, we try to fundraise. It was difficult, obviously, in COVID, and I completely understand. You know, as much as I want to think baseball is an essential service, food is more essential than baseball. So it's difficult with foundations, but we were able to get grants. One of the largest grants we received was actually from the PNC Foundation. PNC Bank gave us a pretty substantial grant. They believed in the mission of our organization. So our funding for hardball comes from generous individuals in the community. There's been some professional players who have stepped up and participated and done some funding, and then, you know, just fundraising our own and putting some of our own capital into the program.
So you did all this while having a social distance, mask up, not share things in practices, go interstate where, you know, people are at risk and you have to be really careful with the traveling. And then did I hear you right? Like people were giving you flack because like, why are these kids? I want to go back to that when you were doing the quotes. What what were you hearing things? Were you guys getting like negative feedback?
Yeah, so we actually had a pretty unique opportunity. One of the individuals, a kid I referenced, who's a very high level player, has a very interesting background. And the Pirates, through the RBI program and through Hardball, wanted to kind of document his journey and his story thus far. And doing so, they came to one of the games and they were filming just, him with the team, him hanging out, just to have some nice beef footage in addition to the interviews. And the media producer that was there said, "Hey, I heard the parents on the other team, and they're saying, these are hoodlums from the inner city. How are they? They don't know how to play the game."
They said, I'm not sure why we're even playing them.
Yeah, and things of that nature where you'd think it's well, in 2020 we've seen that racism exists, and 70 plus million people in our country are very happy with that. But it's unfortunate to think that our kids, and these are kids, right? I mean, they don't have it. It's not their fault they were born in a certain situation. It's not their parents' fault they might have been born in a certain situation, but that's the way people think. And that's why I think the programming is so essential, because in the past, these are the kids that would be scholarship, maybe participate in other programs, or what their parents would be working, 24/7 to get the money to participate on that team, with a bunch of parents who are thinking in the first place, why is this kid even here? So, I think that it's really interesting. It's unfortunate you hear those things, but I think we started to open a lot of eyes. And for each detractor that we've heard, we've heard hundreds of people that are very positive and really like what we're doing. So it's motivation, I think, and it's the real world. I mean, that's the good thing for our kids. We keep it very honest with them. I heard it. They're going to know that they heard, those things are out there. But that's the world we live in, and you can't pretend it doesn't exist. It does exist. How are we going to combat it and move past it, right? I'm not going to let some fool in the crowd stop our kids from achieving their dreams.
I wish I could say I'm surprised to hear what you are telling me, but
No.
I guess I'm not surprised. I guess the only good thing is people are more likely to talk about this and keep it out in the open, and hopefully that'll help all of us. It makes me sad when anytime a kid has to suffer for the sins of grown-ups who should know better.
Just a highlight point. We beat that team, by the way.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier, when I kind of understand a little salty when they're getting their ass kicked. Oh, I can't cuss. I'm sorry. When they're getting their butt kicked.
We might be leaving some of this stuff in. This is one of the more honest conversations. No, I appreciate what you're saying, and I think anyone who plays baseball has heard a swear word or two while they're playing, so I think we'll be all right. No, I mean, it's a situation in the world, and we got to help navigate kids through it. And the idea, I think, is there's barriers to opportunities, and there's barriers to accessing resources, and people like you guys who are out there trying to remove those barriers are what's needed. And I think you said it best, is it's not the kid's fault where they're born, and you give certain kids the opportunity, they're going to take it. But if you can't give them the opportunity, then what? So I appreciate what you're saying.
And, just to kind of close the gap on that, the thing that I really enjoy about this program, and this is Brian's vision, I'm the pretty face that gets to participate. But the demographics of Pittsburgh don't really dictate that it would be very difficult for us to have an all African-American program. I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, but Pittsburgh's majority white. I know the percentages for Latinos and Asian are both under 1% in Pittsburgh. Really? Yeah. It's just, you rarely see Latino or Asian people in Pittsburgh. And so our programs are very diverse in the sense that, they're at least 50% African-American, but we have Latino, Asian kids participating, white kids participating as well. I really do think that having that diversity from a young age, and just even the diversity in the leadership of the program between Brian and myself, between age and between the race and background, really does give those kids a different view maybe of the world. I think a lot of the world's issues are as a result of people not understanding other people and disliking or hating people they've never met, which is just bizarre. So I think that, through our program, we have kids, and you can explain like about Moises and there's a kid named Moises, a kid named Matt Jerpy. One's from the north side of Pittsburgh, immigrant from the Dominican Republic. The other kid is from a more suburban community, underrepresented suburban community. Would have never, ever, ever crossed paths before, and they're like best friends, right? And I think putting those kids together in the program and playing a sport like baseball where there's a common denominator really, kind of level sets and helps move past some of those tensions and racial issues, at least in our program. I know that's not true everywhere. You can't just put a white and black person together and automatically they're friends, but I think that, we really try to make sure that we have a strong focus on diversity and getting more black players in the game. And I'm happy to say our younger teams are representing that now. Having our younger team in hardball this year will have 75% African American, which in Pittsburgh is unheard of. But still making sure there's representation of non-African Americans as well. And we've actually had a lot of inquiries from families, from white families actually, that say, hey, I want my kid to grow up in a diverse I want them to be part of your diverse program. So just to close the gap there, not everybody in Pittsburgh is terrible.
No.
There are people out there, and it's just been a very interesting experience with the RBI program and hardball, just going through some of this year 2020 with the different racial relations and being able to hopefully have an impact that will be lasting many years from now by impacting youth.
I think it's important to note it's good for white people to be in diverse environments too. I don't think people talk about that very often. It doesn't do white people, I think, as a white person, it doesn't do us any good to not grow up with people, all sorts of people. It isolates us and keeps us ignorant. And I was fortunate enough to grow up in a very diverse community. And I see how it plays out and to my benefit all the time. If nothing else, it just makes me, I don't know. It's not something, I don't know. I guess it stumbles me too when I hear these kinds of conversations and you still see over and over and over again these issues coming up. Kind of.
Yeah. So yeah, Steve. I mean, I was in the same boat. I grew up in the inner city of Pittsburgh in a very integrated neighborhood. I went to a high school that was 65% minority. I was the minority in that school, and it was second nature to me to have black brothers and sisters with me, and we would hang out on the weekends. We would socialize. It was second nature. And it is difficult from time to time to kind of wrap my head around why there's such a division, but I understand it. I do understand it. I understand it to be real. And that's why we are accepting to have kind of white kids that come from a predominantly white area that have no African Americans in their high school. And the parent reaches out and says, hey, I want my kid to be part of a diverse program because that's the way the real world is.
Yes.
The real world is not just black and it's just not white. So they are reaching out to us because we have something relatively unique, which is a bit unfortunate that that's so unique. I wish it wasn't so unique. When I was growing up, it wasn't so unique. It was more normalized. So, what Nelson and I would love to do is that we're not a unique, or, we kind of put ourselves in a situation that we grow the mission, that we aren't an anomaly anymore. We're more of the norm than we are, a unique program. So that's something that we're really driving for.
Honestly, it would be great if there was no need for these programs to be in a nonprofit space. That's not generally where people go, but I would wish that we didn't have to make a program because kids don't have access to baseball or African American kids don't play the game. I wish it was just a way where every team just had diversity, and that was just the way it is. Fortunately, it doesn't look like that'll be anytime soon, but hopefully, in the next few years, there'll be other programs like ours within the city of Pittsburgh, within the different communities around here. And I think that we can grow that. And a quote that I heard kind of on the point you're talking about, Brian, which I think could resonate for some people who may listen to this, because it's interesting for me, and it's kind of talking about the white and black thing. And this isn't a great version of this quote because I don't remember exactly, but paraphrasing it, it was talking to that a white person could theoretically live their entire life and never have a meaningful relationship with a minority, and it would not impact the trajectory of their life, right? And you're thinking about that from his perspective. You could grow up in a predominantly white neighborhood, and you can go to predominantly white school, and you can go to college, which is predominantly white, and you can get hired at a bank or whatever company, which is predominantly white, and have all white manager. You would never have to have a meaningful relationship versus someone like myself, a minority. The odds that I could go to somewhere that has minority leadership for my entire life, it's just not possible, right? I have to interact and I have to be integrated with white people. And that's just the way it is. And it's just interesting to think that there are people who I have a close friend who's 35 who said, until I met you 2 years ago at work, I don't think I've ever had a meaningful relationship with a black person. Not because I didn't want to, but it never presented the opportunity. He was that scenario of what I just said before, where suburban went all the way through. So I think it's an interesting thing to think about, and I think having white kids participating in this and having like myself as their coach and leader from when they're 13 all the way up will significantly impact in the future. If okay, we'll look at it. White kids are probably going to continue to get an opportunity before black for the foreseeable future. But maybe when that guy is the manager at the regional bank, that guy says, hiring a Hispanic, hiring an African American person, that's normal. It doesn't matter because I've already had this around me. I've had that leadership. So that's kind of the vision as well. We really want to make sure our African American kids get on the even playing field, but we want to make sure that the white kids that do participate in our programming are understanding of our mission, understanding of the unique opportunity they have to impact the world by being just aware and present of what's going on. So we do a lot, like I said at the beginning, none of this has anything to do with baseball, really. It's a mentorship program, and we happen to use baseball as the conduit to do it. So
I think that was an excellent example of what privilege is.
Yep.
Something that I definitely have benefited from as a white guy, regardless of what income I came from or my neighborhood. I present as what is for a long time was considered the American norm, and that's privilege. So I think that's on the money. And I think the good news is there's a lot of organizations and MLB in particular, there is some agenda to chip away at this stuff. And I think it's to everyone's benefit. Just like you said, it's good for white people too. It's good. I'm gonna shift off of this for a little bit because we're running out of time. I kind of want to talk about moving forward now. So COVID, we're going to be dealing with it for the rest of this year. Hopefully it's not as traumatic as it was last year. What kinds of things do you think we need to be doing moving forward? What kinds of concerns do you have next? Like how are your programming going to recover from this? How do you plan to bounce?
So from a Pirates RBI perspective, we want to be able to impact those 1,600 kids. So just this week, we sent out a communications that we will plan on moving forward with the RBI City Sports League. City of Pittsburgh's on board. The chief of operations with the city of Pittsburgh kind of gave her blessing to say, hey, we can open our fields up. We're ready to roll. We're going to have a pretty strict return to play plan where we're going to try to make sure that we distance as much as possible. We'll wear masks when we're in dugouts, not necessarily out in the field, but we're going to try to use some best practices that try to keep us as safe as possible, as practical. And, we found a little bit of success with Pittsburgh Hardball being able to play using those best practices. And fortunately, we didn't have anyone get ill. We didn't experience anyone that had any problems. We have sanitizer in the dugout. We spray everything down. We're probably killing the ozone because we have aerosol sanitizer. We'll probably pivot from that. But I think we have a little bit of a body of work of how we implemented best practices over the summertime that we're going to implement coming this summer. So we're going to have our programming. We're going to limit the occupancy in what we call the community baseball and softball center here in the Boys and Girls Club. We're going to try to break it down into age groups, and we're going to continue to have programming, and we're going to continue to grow Pittsburgh Hardball. And what's exciting now, Nelson can explain, we are growing it. Last year in 2020, it was more of a tactical plan. We had to get those kids that were seniors in high school on the radar very quickly. There was no coaches that could see you. We had to give them a body of work. They had no high school play because their high school season got shut down. So we had to get them out on a field, get some video because coaches couldn't come and see anything because they couldn't visit. There was a dead period. There's still a dead period for Division I. So we relied very heavily on Nelson's excellent editorial skills in video and YouTube. And we were able to send it out to coaches and get these kids on the radar. So last year was more of a tactical play. This year is a little more strategic where we're really growing the program and forging some of these fundraising partnerships as well. That's helping really subsidize our program. So, Nelson could probably give you a little bit more color on
as
that.
Brian said, there's 18U program. It was just one group of 15 kids. Right now we have
Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
We have an 18U program, we have a 16U program, but we have generated a lot of interest, particularly from African-American kids that are freshmen in high school that want to play, that have the desire to get better. So we're thinking of doing a freshman team, a program we're calling the Base Path program. In that program, and going to back up as well, I spoke to the grant that PNC gave to us earlier this year. We're partnering with a school called Neighborhood Academy. Neighborhood Academy is an all African-American school in Pittsburgh. It's a charter school. Kids from 6th to 12th grade attend the Neighborhood Academy. And so we're doing programming to introduce the game of baseball to those kids at the Neighborhood Academy. In addition, some of these other kids from the community who are newer to baseball or need skill development, we're with RBI developing their skills, but those ones that are saying, hey, I want to be high level, that may not be ready for the 16U team to go travel, we want to make sure that they still get the same training opportunities. Not only do they get all the opportunities with RBI to train, to play recreational, they still get the high level training opportunities. So when they are 16, they're ready to go, and we're not kind of scrapping the fine guys. We have people in the pipeline. So that's the goal that we're trying to do, is create a pipeline between RBI, between hardball. And, I really do think it's important for us to have girls softball, fast pitch in the hardball program eventually as well, because I know there's young ladies who aspire to be in college and play. We are very sensitive to ensuring that it's executed at the same level that it would be for young men. I would hate to say we're doing softball just to do it, right? If we do softball, it needs to be executed at a very high level. And I'm not an expert in fast pitch. I'm not an expert in recruiting, and it would be unfair to them to have me try to run, you know what I mean? So we're looking to get someone who's passionate about fast pitch into the fold to be a part of the program and help those young ladies in Pittsburgh as well get to that next level. So those are kind of the goals that we have, and continuing to grow the game and, eventually have an option for young ladies to get into college as well.
That's awesome. I think it's inspiring to me to hear people who are looking ahead, have some energy. I appreciate it. Gentlemen, I regret that I'm going to end this conversation, but I have to be mindful of time, and I don't know how long people would stay watching YouTube. So,
right.
Conversation.
Jokes or something? No, I'm kidding. But thank you. We appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.
No, great. So, I'll make sure to share this with you, and we're going to end it here. And thanks again.
Thank you.
Steve.
Take care.
Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.